So on this shelf, I keep my comic book movies. I am a massive nerd, and having a place to keep all my comic book movies is pretty freaking awesome. Some of these are on DVD, some of these are on Blu-ray. I'll upgrade them to Blu-ray at some point. Starting us off is Ant-Man on DVD. Don't have Ant-Man and the Wasp yet, but I'll pick that up. Then I have the 4 Avengers movies. I really like all 4 Avengers movies, yes, even Age of Ultron. Next up I have Batman and Batman Returns. I'm okay toward Batman 1989. I've only watched it once or twice, and it's alright. Batman Returns I haven't watched yet, but I'll watch it at some point. Then down here I have The Dark Knight Returns Deluxe Edition, which has both parts 1 and 2 in one movie. Definitely want to pick that up on Blu-ray at some point, because that's probably my favorite comic book of all time. Next up I have Batman Mask of the Phantasm, one of the best theatrically released Batman movies ever. Bruce Timm is such a great director and writer. Batman Triple Feature, this one has Batman Bad Blood, Batman vs. Robin, and Son of Batman. I've only ever watched Son of Batman because I was going to do a ranking, but I don't know, I'll go back and watch those at some point. Then right here I have Justice League Triple Feature that has 3 Batman movies. I don't know why it says Justice League Triple Feature. Under the Red Hood, Gotham Knight, and Year One. I'll probably watch those at some point, but I want to read the comics they're based on first. Next up, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. The theatrical edition I'm probably mixed leaning negative on, and the Ultimate edition I'm probably maybe mixed leaning positive on. I'd have to rewatch it, but you know, I don't know. That movie isn't as horrible as some people say it is. Black Panther, one of the better Marvel movies, probably the most thematically rich Marvel Studios movies, at least so far, and I don't know, it's a movie that breaks the Marvel template, and that's something I really like. Then I have the Blade trilogy. Definitely need to watch those at some point, because Blade is arguably the first modern Marvel movie. So next up is the Captain America trilogy, probably the best trilogy in the MCU, one of the best superhero trilogies ever. Next up is Daredevil 2003. I don't know, I don't hate that movie as much as some people do, but it definitely has its flaws. Doctor Strange, pretty okay movie, nothing special. Fantastic Four 2005 and Rise of the Silver Surfer 2007. This one, I guess, came from Brooklyn, because it has Brooklyn Public Library thing on it. I'm nowhere near Brooklyn, so I don't know how that happened, but those movies are fine, I guess. They're probably, unfortunately, the best Fantastic Four movies. Next up is Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider. It's an okay movie. It's not as bad as some people say it is, but it's not really that great. Same thing goes for Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. Meh. Green Lantern First Flight, animated movie. Haven't watched that yet, but I will at some point. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, one of the better franchises in the MCU. Probably the only one that doesn't feel made by committee. Hellboy 1 and 2. Haven't watched those yet, but need to. And then The Incredible Hulk. Probably the most underrated MCU movie. It's probably the darkest and most serious one. It doesn't really have the tone that Marvel movies came to be known for, but it's still not bad. Let's go on to the second side. The first up on this side is The Incredible Hulk Returns, Trial of the Incredible Hulk, and Death of the Incredible Hulk. Those 3 are, I think, TV movies, or maybe they were direct to DVD, that take place in the same universe as the Bill Bixby TV show. I've only ever watched The Incredible Hulk Returns, but I need to watch the rest, because I bet they're good. Next up, I have the Iron Man trilogy. I really love Iron Man 1. That's basically a perfect movie. Next up is Iron Man 2, which is probably my least favorite movie in the entire MCU, and Iron Man 3, which is somewhere in the middle. Justice League Triple Feature. This one has Throne of Atlantis versus Teen Titans and Gods and Monsters. I've only ever watched Throne of Atlantis, but I bet the other ones are good. Then I have Justice League, the theatrical cut. This movie's fine, but I'm definitely really excited for the Snyder Cut. Next up is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The comic that this is based on, I'm not the biggest fan of, despite the fact that it does have a really interesting premise. This movie was apparently such a hassle to make that it made Sean Connery quit acting, and that really sucks. Man of Steel, haven't rewatched this in a while, but I need to, because I bet people say it gets better on rewatch. Then I have the Men in Black trilogy. I think I've only ever seen the first 2, but the first one's really fun, and the second one's not quite as good. Then I have Punisher Warzone. I can't really decide which one I like more between this and the Thomas Jane Punisher movie. I mean, they both have their own set of pros and cons. Shazam, one of my favorite movies from last year. Zachary Levi, Asher Angel, Mark Strong, and Jaimin Hounsou are all really good in it, and Jack Dylan Grazer from It. Then I have Spider-Man 3. My parents have Spider-Man 1 and 2, but I need to pick them up on Blu-ray because this is one of the best trilogies ever made. Even Spider-Man 3 isn't a horrible movie. Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, these movies are fine. They're not as bad as some people say they are, but they definitely have their flaws. Next up, I have Spider-Man Homecoming. Decent enough reboot to the series, has its own set of flaws, but certainly is an improvement over The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, one of the best movies ever made, probably my favorite movie of the decade. Great movie. Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay. Haven't watched that yet, but with the reputation that animated DC movies get, I should at some point. That also applies to basically these next 3 movies: Superman Doomsday, Superman Batman Public Enemies, and The Death of Superman. And honestly, the next one, Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Haven't watched them, but with the reputation that animated DC movies get, I should. Next up, I have the original live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trilogy. I grew up on those movies. I really liked them. Even the third one, which gets really stupid and silly at times. TMNT, solid movie. TMNT, solid animated Ninja Turtles movie. I know a lot of people hate it, but I don't. Thor 1, 2, and 3, need to get the second one on Blu-ray. Probably, I don't know, you could argue it's the weakest trilogy in the MCU. I actually really like Thor 1, even though I know a lot of people don't. Next up, I have kind of an Alan Moore section of V for Vendetta, Watchmen, and Watchmen Director's Cut. V for Vendetta, it's okay. It makes some drastic changes from the book, but it's still okay. Watchmen, really similar to the novel, but is not great. Haven't watched the director's cut yet, but heard it's better. Wonder Woman, probably the best DCEU movie, although Shazam would be a close second. Gal Gadot is excellent, Chris Pine's excellent. Falls apart a little bit in the third act, but it's still pretty good. Then, capping off this shelf is the X-Men movies. I had 1 and 2, but I think I lent them to my cousin, and don't know if he gave them back, but that's okay, because I'm going to upgrade them to Blu-ray anyway. I really like X-Men 2, X-Men First Class, and Logan. And I like, but don't love, the original X-Men, The Wolverine, Days of Future Past, and Deadpool 1 and 2. I don't mind X-Men The Last Stand as much as some people do, and I really don't like X-Men Apocalypse, which I don't have, and X-Men Origins Wolverine, and Dark Phoenix, which I also don't have. So yeah, that's it. That wraps up this shelf. Let's move on. So in this shoebox is where I keep my horror DVDs. I eventually want to pick up these on Blu-ray, but haven't gotten around to it yet. So yeah, let's get started. First up is The Blair Witch Project. Haven't watched this movie yet, but like I said, that's a recurring theme in this video. What can I say about it? It's one of the most famous micro-budget movies ever. It's probably the go-to cult classic movie. I'll watch it at some point, but yeah. Next up is Stephen King's Dreamcatcher. Got that from a local thrift store. And I got Blair Witch Project from a thrift store in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This movie is fine. I mean, it's not anything to brag about. It's not one of Stephen King's best, but it's not one of the worst. Next up is Friday the 13th 8-movie collection. I've seen, I think, 4 or 5 of those, and I'll, do those at some point and rank those at some point, but yeah. Next up is Halloween. Bunch of these movies. 1, 2, 3, 4, missing 5, 6, H2O, Resurrection, and then the 2 Rob Zombie remakes. I don't know. I did a ranking of this franchise a while back, so if you want to know my thoughts on those movies, you can see them there. Halloween, one of the best movies ever made. Arguably the best slasher movie ever made. One of the best horror movies ever made. A movie that really emphasizes its atmosphere. What else can I say about it? Next up is The Mothman Prophecies. Got that from a local thrift store. Haven't watched that yet, but I bet it'll be interesting. Next up is A Nightmare on Elm Street. I have the 1 through 4 and the 5 through 8. Got that from another local retail store. I've also done a ranking of these movies, so if you want my opinions on them, you can go watch that. I love the original Elm Street. I love Dream Warriors, and I like some of the other ones. Next up is Psycho 1, 2, 3, and 4. I really like Psycho and Psycho 2. 3 and 4 are not as good, but they're fine. I'm a really big fan of Bates Motel, the TV show. That's also very much worth watching. Next up is Red Dragon. Silence of the Lambs is one of the best movies ever, and Red Dragon, I've heard, is a suitable prequel. Haven't watched that yet, though. Next up is 2 M. Night Shyamalan movies, The Sixth Sense and Signs. Got them from local retail stores, or thrift stores, sorry. The Sixth Sense is one of my favorite movies ever. It's such a good atmospheric horror film. It deserved all the Oscars it got. Signs, this is a divisive movie. I know some people love it. Chris Stuckman is a big fan. Sean Chandler is a big fan. But, I don't know, I never really vibed with it. I've only watched it once, so if I rewatch it, I might like it more, but as of right now, it's okay. So yeah, that wraps up this box. Let's move on to the next one. So yeah, and this shoebox is where I keep my TV, DVD, and Blu-rays. I'm actually really running out of room in this box, so that's why Firefly's up here. And one of the things I don't even keep in the box, I just laid it on my DVD shelf because I didn't have anywhere else to put it. But yeah, I'll probably get another shoebox. Let's get started. First up is Avatar: The Last Airbender, the complete series. You guys are going to hate me for this because that's another thing that's really popular with people my age, but I haven't watched that show ever. I'll watch it at some point, either on Blu-ray or on Netflix now that it's up there. Probably do a review and maybe a ranking. And I'll probably enjoy the show since it seems geared toward things I like fantasy, character development, world building, stuff like that. But yeah, next up is Batman. This is actually worth pulling out. Batman, the complete 1943 movie serial collection, includes all 15 segments. Man, this thing, I'm really happy that I found it. I found it at a local thrift store. For those of you that don't know, before movie trailers became a thing, before movies they would show cartoons and what were called serials, which are short little live-action segments. And one of them was a live-action Batman segment, which is what this is. This is a collection of shorts from, I think, the 1940s. I'm really, really happy that I found this, because I bet this is incredibly rare. Next up is Daredevil Seasons 1 and 2. Daredevil is probably my favorite Netflix original show. It's probably my favorite superhero show of all time. So I'm really happy that I managed to find those. Next up is Dinotopia. This was a fun little mini-series. It's really, really impressive what they managed to do on a TV budget back in, I think this was 2002. Also, it gave birth to Wentworth Miller's career, who went on to be in Prison Break. This miniseries is good from what I remember, but I haven't watched it since I was a little kid. Next up is Freaks and Geeks. This is one of my favorite TV shows ever. I'm really happy that I found the DVD for the price I did, because when Judd Apatow and Paul Feig came together for that, they created something truly special. I guess next up would be Firefly, the complete series. This is arguably my favorite TV show of all time. I have a hard time comparing it to other shows I like just because it's only one season, but I think this might be my favorite season of television ever. The writing, directing, acting, it's something I reviewed it back when, I was in high school and put it up on the channel. If you scroll really far back, you can probably find it, but I need to rewatch it and re-review it now that I kind of understand how reviews work a bit better, because truly it's a masterpiece. Next up is The Office, the UK version, the complete series. Picked this up from a local retail store. Haven't watched this yet. I'm a pretty big fan of the American Office, and I'll watch this at some point, but yeah. Next up is Star Wars Clone Wars, the 2003 version, Volume 1. I picked this up from a local thrift store also. I watched this when I was a child, and I really, really liked it, and I should go back and rewatch it. I'm a fan of the animation style, and while I probably will end up liking the Cartoon Network version more, I could see myself liking this a lot. Next up is Stranger Things Seasons 1 and 2. Haven't gotten Season 3 yet because it hasn't been released yet, but I hope they do. I'm a casual fan of this show. I do really like it, but I don't love it as much as some people do. Like I said, my favorite Netflix original is Daredevil, but this is probably up there, at least of the ones I've watched. But I really love the 80s nostalgia, I love the aesthetic, and I really love the things that it takes influence from, like Stephen King, Goonies, etc. Next up is SpongeBob SquarePants, the complete first and second seasons. Like most kids my age, I grew up with SpongeBob. I'm very nostalgic for it. I haven't watched those yet, but I probably will at some point. Next up is Teen Titans, the complete first and second seasons. That's another thing that, like most kids my age, I grew up with. I really, really love the Cartoon Network Teen Titans. It's a show I feel a lot of nostalgia for. Next up is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1987 one. Is this volume 1, I think? There's something like that. I know there's 2 or 3 volumes in this section, or in this collection that I haven't picked up yet. Even though I grew up in the era of the 2003 Cartoon Network Ninja Turtles, my older brother always made us watch that one instead, and I'm glad he did, because even though it is dumb and corny, it's something that I feel nostalgic for. I grew up on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so yeah. Next up is That 70s Show, Greatest Hits. I'm a pretty big fan of this show. It's definitely one of my favorite sitcoms. I've watched the entire series twice, I think, which is rare. I usually don't rewatch TV shows, but yeah, this just is a collection of some classic episodes that my parents picked me up for Christmas or birthday, I think it was. Next up was Tremors, the complete series. Let me get this out. Like I said, I'm a fan of Tremors. I'm a fan of dumb, schlocky sci-fi horror, and I like this series. I actually think it's better than most people give it credit for. It only ran for 1 season, 13 episodes, but, you know, I don't mind it. And next up is Watchmen, the complete motion comic. This I'm actually really looking forward to watching, because I know this thing is really rare, probably hard to watch, but I've heard it's a lot better than Zack Snyder's movie, which I don't dislike at all, but yeah. And last but certainly not least is Death Note, the complete series on Blu-ray. I read the first 3 or 4 volumes of the manga of this, and I'll definitely go back and read the rest of them at some point, but I kind of fell off of it, and then after that I'll probably watch this series, but yeah, so yeah, I think that's about it. So I thought I'd cap off this video by showing the 2 VHSs I still own. Yeah, first up is Dumb and Dumber. Haven't watched this movie yet, but I will at some point. Jim Carrey, Jeff Daniels comedy, whatever. The next one is one I'm actually kind of proud of. Mosquito. For those of you that don't know, this is a dumb, corny sci-fi movie about giant mosquitoes. It might have been a Sci-Fi Channel original, I don't know, but the reason that I have this on VHS is because if you look for it on DVD, it's worth several $100s. If you look for it on Blu-ray, there are some going on Amazon or eBay for like over $1,000, which is crazy, I know. But yeah, so I think that actually wraps this up. This is the end of this video. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll have more videos out soon. Be sure to subscribe. Bye.